Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees, here are tonight's top stories. The UK government talks with the Taliban, hoping to evacuate British nationals and vulnerable Afghans who have been left behind. Media regulator Ofcom has cleared TV presenter Piers Morgan over his comments about Meghan Markle. He says it's a victory for free speech. And a look at the choice made by some parents to home educate their children. This education route is increasing year on year. Downing Street has confirmed that the UK is in talks with the Taliban on how to evacuate British nationals and vulnerable Afghans who have been left behind. NTD's Eddie Aiken brings us the story.
A Number 10 spokesman said the Prime Minister's Special Representative for Afghan Transition, Simon Gass, has travelled to Doha and is having talks with senior Taliban representatives. The British government stressed it is important for the Taliban to guarantee safe passage out of the country for British nationals and those Afghans who have worked with the UK over the past 20 years. Ministers estimate that hundreds of UK nationals and over 1,000 eligible Afghans may have been left behind after NATO forces completed their withdrawal from the country earlier this week. The Foreign Office said it's deploying 15 crisis response specialists to Afghanistan's neighbouring countries to help evacuate those who could not be airlifted to safety from Kabul airport. These officials will help process people escaping over land borders into Pakistan, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. The Home Office announced that Afghans who worked with the British government and military will be granted immediate indefinite leave to remain. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the UK owes an immense debt to these Afghans and he is determined to give them the support they need to rebuild their lives in the UK. Eddie Aiken, NTD News.
Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab today told MPs that the government was operating in Afghanistan according to a UK intelligence assessment which indicated Kabul was unlikely to fall this year. NTD's Trevor Piper has more.
In an emergency session of Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee on the crisis in Afghanistan, the Foreign Secretary says Britain's intelligence service didn't expect the Taliban to take over the country so quickly. He says the central assessment was that the Taliban were unlikely to take Kabul this year.
Most likely the central proposition was that given the troop withdrawal by the end of August, you would see a steady deterioration from that point, and that it was unlikely Kabul would fall this year.
Raab was under considerable pressure in recent weeks. Opposition parties said he should be sacked for remaining on holiday as the Taliban advanced. Raab said in hindsight he would not have gone away, but he never considered resigning.
Did you ever at any point consider or offer to resign?
No, I considered getting on with the job of what has been a Herculean task of getting 17,000 people out and now focusing on getting out the remaining people that we want to see out via third countries.
The Foreign Secretary said immediately after the hearing he would travel to the region to discuss the crisis with Afghanistan's neighbouring countries. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
TV presenter Piers Morgan is cleared by media regulator Ofcom after his comments about Meghan Markle became the most complained about TV moment in British history. He hails it as a victory for free speech. NTD's Anna Rodriguez has the story.
Media regulator Ofcom has cleared TV presenter Piers Morgan over his comments about Meghan Markle. Morgan says the Ofcom ruling is a resounding victory for free speech. The Ofcom ruling says broadcasters can include views that are potentially harmful or highly offensive in their programming, and that restricting Morgan's views would be an unwarranted and a chilling restriction on free expression. But it also criticised Morgan for his apparent disregard for the subject of suicide. During the interview, Markle said she was ignored when raising concerns about her mental health and suicidal thoughts. On TV the following day, Morgan said he didn't believe her.
I'm angry to the point of bawling over today. I'm sickened by what I've just had to watch.
OK, a number of people might be upset.
Sorry, you can come to
you
can defend it in a minute.
It was the most complained about TV moment in British history, with more than 50,000 complaints. Morgan says he was told by ITV to either apologise or leave the show. He left and stands by his comments.
No, I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in the right to be allowed to have an opinion. If people want to believe Meghan Markle, that's entirely their right. I don't believe almost anything that comes out of her mouth.
Morgan said in his Daily Mail column that the ruling is a victory over cancel culture. Anna Rodriguez, NTD News.
This morning, activists from the climate change group Extinction Rebellion broke 2 glass doors at London's JPMorgan office using a hammer and a chisel. The group accused the investment bank of funding climate change. It's part of Extinction Rebellion's 2-week-long protest in London. The protests come ahead of the UN's climate summit to be held in Scotland in November. London's Met Police say they have specialist protester removal teams to deal with what they call complex lock-ons used by activists. Staff shortages in the UK could impact the Christmas period. For the meat industry, there's an estimated 14,000 vacancies. The Association of Independent Meat Suppliers have been in talks with the Ministry of Justice to employ prisoners to fill the gap. NTD's Jane Worrell has this report.
The meat industry is looking to employ ex-offenders and prisoners to fill vacancies. A combination of Brexit and pandemic restrictions has led to staff shortages, with many EU nationals going back to their own countries and finding jobs there. Industry leaders say there are around 14,000 job vacancies. High street companies like Halfords and Timpson already hire prison leavers. Tony Guja of the Association of Independent Meat Suppliers says he hopes his members can work together with prison leavers to fill the gap. They'll be working with inmates in open prisons on a risk-assessed temporary release programme and prison leavers.
We contacted one of the open prisons straight away and they said, normally I'd bite your hand off for this, but we're actually at our quota because lots of people are now employing these ROTL offenders. So by speaking with New Futures Network, what they actually said to us was, well, why don't we look at prison leavers? Those are people who are just about to leave prison or who have just left prison, because obviously they find it difficult to perhaps say in an interview that they are an ex-offender, that they've just served a prison sentence.
In terms of your members in your association, what's the general feeling among them for this system?
Somebody said to me, providing they have 2 arms and 2 legs and are willing to learn, we'll take them because they're becoming that desperate for staff. Across the board, the majority have said this is a really good idea, we really support this. If we can do something to help prison leavers, because we have a recruitment crisis at the moment, let's get them in, let's get them trained up, and hopefully they'll stay with us and hopefully it will be part of their rehabilitation.
He says at least 3 large meat processing companies in the UK are working closely with their local prisons. A Ministry of Justice spokesperson said that helping prisoners find jobs during their sentence and after release makes it much less likely they'll reoffend. Jane Worrell, NTD News, London.
A cleaner form of petrol is being introduced at filling stations across Britain from today. The government says the aim is to cut carbon emissions. NTD's Eddie Aitken brings us this report.
4 courts across the country are starting to provide E10 petrol from Wednesday. The E10 petrol is made with up to 10% bioethanol. It is replacing E5 petrol, which contains up to 5%. The change will bring the UK in line with countries such as Belgium, Finland, France and Germany. Bioethanol is a type of renewable fuel made from plants. The Department for Transport says more than 95% of petrol cars in the UK are compatible with E10, and it's not expected to cost more than E5. But it has admitted E10 can marginally reduce fuel economy, although it insists the impact is almost unnoticeable to most drivers when making everyday journeys. An impact assessment published last year estimates around 600,000 cars will be incompatible with the new fuel. They are mainly classic cars or those built in the early 2000s. If you are not sure whether your car is compatible, you can visit this website to check. The government wants to make E10 the new standard petrol grade. It says the fuel contains less carbon. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
More and more parents are choosing to educate their children at home rather than send them to school. That's according to the Association of Directors of Children's Services. But there's no formal register for the number of children in home education. NTD's Noel Rodro speaks with two parents who have taken this route.
Pupils across the UK are set to return to schools for the start of a new school year, but a growing number of parents are opting for homeschooling or elective home education. The Association of Directors of Children's Services said that as of October 2020, more than 75,000 children were being educated at home in England. That is an increase of 38% on the previous year. They say that this figure has been growing by around 20% each year for the past 5 years. Abby has two boys, aged 9 and 7, whom she home educates. She told me the local authority were very helpful with the shift from school to home. Abby said one of the main worries among parents considering homeschooling is that the child or children will no longer be around other children. But she says in her case, these fears were unfounded.
I researched the social side a lot more than the educational side of things, which was brilliant. We're over-socialised sometimes. We have to really pick and choose certain things.
She said home education has allowed her to vary the methods of teaching she uses to include more practical experiences.
Okay, so when we first started, I was very sit down, we need to do this at this time. Realised for my kids that does not work. I was implementing school at home for the first few months and it didn't work. So now we have a monthly topic. We delve in, we do lots of trips. Instead of sitting down and writing, we socialise, we go out, we learn from experience. We're more life learners than doing the academic side of things. But then they do have their online subscriptions, which monitors their progress.
And home educators sometimes get together and set up tutoring co-ops, broadening the range of the topics.
So we'll have somebody who's got some kind of qualification in geography, say, one in maths, and our kids go round and they kind of learn in that sense as well.
For Mum Carolyn, there's a strong suspicion that her son Daniel has autism and ADHD, which affects his learning ability. Being in school affected his anxiety levels, so she took the decision to home educate. She says usually specialist class sizes are at around 8 pupils, whereas his class in the village was at 20.
But it's very difficult to access specialist provision for your child when it's so difficult to get a diagnosis in the first place. So the system is set up to almost want the children to fail in a mainstream setting in order to be able to access a specialist setting. And that's really not fair on the children.
She says through a local social group for home educators, she met others in the same situation and so has been able to set up networks.
There is a large percentage of children with special educational needs in the home education community, purely because those parents recognise that those needs can't be met in mainstream settings. So we keep the groups small, but very much tailored to the needs of these children.
Local authorities have a duty to establish whether a suitable education is being provided for children. Currently, children who have never attended or applied to a mainstream school are not always seen by the local authority.
And a lot of people feel that's how it should be, that the state shouldn't be able to dictate how or what you teach your children. As my background is education, I'm a little uncomfortable with that for safeguarding reasons, but I do understand that it's a very strongly held, belief by a lot of people that that's how it should be.
The Department for Education is consulting on a mandatory register for all home educators.
However, there will be a very small minority of people who want their children hidden from the authorities and hidden from public view for reasons potentially that children are being abused, or that I know there are concerns about what would be termed as illegal schools, which are have extremist views, and children are sent to those schools. Although the vast majority of people, there are no issues for the safety of their children. Potentially, if one or two children can be picked up and saved by having a register, I see no issue with having a register, personally.
The Parliamentary Education Committee says the DFE must properly and with speed examine the life chances and social outcomes of elective home-educated children compared with those who have received a formal education through a mainstream school. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
Still to come, an independent institute in Germany says in about 80% of official COVID deaths in recent weeks, COVID was not the primary cause of death. That and more after the break. France started administering COVID-19 booster shots today to people over 65 and to those with underlying health conditions.
Over time, there's a drop in antibodies for people who were vaccinated just over 6 months ago, and so we want to give a booster to increase the levels of antibodies for those who did it a while ago and are at risk.
The French government followed the recommendations of the country's health authority, the HAS, which cites studies suggesting a fall in vaccine effectiveness over time, especially against the Delta or Indian variant. The HAS says the elderly and people with underlying health conditions are the most affected. The Health Ministry says about 18 million people are estimated to be eligible for the booster shot. The government so far has made no decision regarding the potential extension of the campaign to the whole population. And in Germany, the head of Independent Health Research Institute, IGES, says only around 20% of official COVID deaths in the country since July were caused by COVID-19. In an interview with the Die Welt newspaper, Professor Bertram Häusler says for the other 80%, the underlying infection dates back more than 5 weeks. It must therefore be assumed that COVID was not the real cause of death. This is because in Germany, 11 days are seen as the average duration from infection to death. Häusler says the official COVID-19 death statistic has become increasingly distorted. Hundreds of thousands in Ukraine were killed during Stalin's repression. Now, near the city of Odessa, excavation work has begun on what could be one of the biggest mass graves from that dark period. NTD's Trevor Piper has more on this.
Researchers began excavating near Ukraine's southern city of Odessa at what could be one of the country's largest Stalin-era mass grave sites.
We hope to find over 8,000 people here who were condemned by the NTD special troika to be shot.
The graves under what was until recently a rubbish dump were discovered last month during construction work for an airport. Historians estimate hundreds of thousands of people in Ukraine were killed in the 1930s during a period known as the Great Terror under communist dictator Joseph Stalin, and 40,000 in the Odessa region alone.
There are coins made in 1938 to 1939. We did not find coins issued later. It can be assumed that these coins belong to those who were buried in those graves.
He says preparation should be finished at the end of the year, then exhumation work would start. Archaeologists want to find out if victims were killed at the site or if their bodies were brought to the graves after execution.
People should see that our country is also striving not to close these difficult pages of its history. not to hide it, but to show the whole world. And this, above all, is our duty to those who died here.
Odessa's mayor says the city plans to erect a memorial at the site. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
To Paris now, where the largest Triceratops skeleton ever found is going on display. It's set to be auctioned in late October, and buyers are interested. NTD's Joe Duguid brings us this report.
Meet Big John, the largest Triceratops ever found. It is estimated to be more than 66 million years old. It is named after the owner of the land where more than 200 of the dinosaurs' bones were found.
The Triceratops is one of the most well-known dinosaurs in the world. Everyone knows the 3 horns of the Triceratops, the power of this animal from the dinosaur's golden age.
The 200-piece skeleton is being assembled for the public to view before it goes up for auction next month. It's estimated that it could fetch up to £1.3 million. The name Triceratops means 3-horned face. The skull of Big John measures 2.62 metres in length. It's the biggest ever found.
On the top of being the biggest specimen in size, it is also very well preserved. Up to 60% of the skeleton, which is incredible. Usually we just find the skull of the Triceratops in collections.
In the fossilised remains of his bony frill is a gaping hole, a battle scar inflicted by a smaller rival. Big John will be on display to the public from the 16th of September, before going under the hammer in late October. Joy Duguid, NTD News.
From the largest specimen to the world's largest active wooden ship, which has been docked in Sweden before taking to the high seas. The ship intends to stop in London next year on the way to its final destination, China. NTD's David English has the details.
This wooden ship is a full-size replica of a merchant ship that used to sail the seas in the 1700s. Almost identical to its predecessor, but the original didn't have this digital interface to help with steering. Now the crew has been conducting trials with this replica to get ready to sail from Sweden to China.
The ship is actually made for ocean passing, so the ship she's missing the oceans, and this trip to Stockholm is to prepare us and to work together, and I think that has been achieved.
When the original ship was returning home to Sweden in 1745, it ran aground and sank. More than 130 men were on board. Fortunately, everyone survived. Remains of the ship were discovered in 1984, sparking the idea to build a replica. This 200-foot replica is listed as the world's largest active wooden ship.
We do not compromise with the material, so everything is nature fiber. So the ropes are made in hemp and the sails are made in flax. So no synthetic materials, and it smells good, it looks good, it feels good. Everything seems so real.
This will be the ship's first voyage for 6 years. The crew plans to stop in many places, including London and Athens, before going through the Suez Canal to China. David English, NTD News.
Today saw the start of Venice Film Festival. The event director says putting this year's edition together was an easy task, with so many movies held back because of the pandemic and stars and filmmakers eager to travel again. NTD's Eddie Aiken brings us this story.
The 78th Venice Film Festival opens on Wednesday, with Pedro Almodovar's Parallel Mothers paving the way for a celebrity-heavy event.
Everybody, everywhere, is eager to come back, to reopen, to restart, to release the films that they stay on the shelf for 1.5 years or maybe 2 years. So, I mean, they were so willing to come to Venice that it was easy. We know that most of the films in the main competition are already sold out, and this is a good sign, but it means that someone will not able to get the tickets. So.
Among the movies getting their world premiere during the 10-day showcase are Denis Villeneuve's star-studded Dune, Pablo Larraín's Spencer, starring Kristen Stewart as Princess Diana, and Benedict Cumberbatch and Maggie Gyllenhaal's feature film debut, The Lost Daughter. Ridley Scott will screen his medieval epic, The Last Duel, with Hollywood heavyweights Matt Damon and Ben Affleck expected to join the filmmaker on the red carpet.
We saw a lot of films, and the surprise was to discover that the quality is higher than usual. It's like the pandemic served as a sort of stimulation for the creativity of all the filmmakers, and most of them did one of their most beautiful films. So yeah, we have a very strong lineup. We couldn't invite all the films that we saw, that we loved, that we liked, because of lack of space.
As in 2020, strict pandemic restrictions are in place at the festival site. Screening venues are operating at half capacity, and a wall blocks the view to the red carpet to stop crowds from gathering outside. Everybody entering the theatre will have to have a COVID pass. Those who are not vaccinated can take a test. Chloe Zhao, the director of last year's Golden Lion winner Nomadland, will be among the filmmakers deciding the winning films at this year's event. South Korean Parasite director Bong Joon-ho will preside over the jury. 21 titles will be vying for the Venice Lion trophies this year. The festival runs from September 1st to 11th. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
That's the news for today, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Leith. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via channel box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.